sun and sand and warm blue water, the stuff of dreams and lazy days beside a tropical sea. But how many beach lovers know what lurks out there, out in the bay? The beach is more than sand and suntan oil. Water no deeper than a swimming pool can hide the unexpected. This is a swimmer from that other world, the sandy shallows just beyond the shore. It will be our guide to this watery land, to drowned deserts where living forests sway, sunlit fields of grass where mermaids swim, a realm where reality can be as strange as myth. Bottlenose dolphins visiting a beach in Western Australia. Along this narrow strip of sand, two worlds meet. For more than 2,000 years, dolphins have been fabled for their friendliness, their apparent wish to play with us. A privileged encounter such as this is the closest most of us ever get to the life of the sea. Legends tell of dolphins carrying people on their backs. Today, they'll carry us on a journey to the shallow seas that lie along the shore. Bays like this lie between beach and reef throughout the tropics. If coral reefs are the rainforests of the ocean, these sandflats are the deserts, and those dark patches are the grasslands, the savannas. The water here is barely deep enough to drown in, but it's far from lifeless. Stingrays, hunters. But what is there to hunt? The seafloor looks almost sterile. Tourists pass it by without a glance on their way to the reefs beyond. The shellfish the stingrays eat are buried in the sand. In some ways, these open sandflats are just as hostile as a true desert. They're scarred by tidal currents, baked by the sun. But those currents and that warmth can bring fertility, make the desert bloom. Our dolphins lead us from the sand to the savannah. This isn't seaweed, it's seagrass, one of the few kinds of flowering plant that can grow permanently submerged in salty water. Seagrasses thrive in calm, sunlit shallows throughout the tropics. Like the grassy plains of Africa, they have their hunters and their grazers, and those include a very special creature. In the fevered imaginations of sailors too long at sea, this was a mermaid. though the Aboriginal name of sea pig seems more appropriate. In fact, it's a dugong, and it eats seagrass. This submarine savanna has predators too, a sea snake. The grasslands are fertile feeding and breeding grounds for fish. There's always something here for a snake to hunt. So potential prey resort to camouflage. The honeycomb pattern of a boxfish breaks up its outline, helps it merge with its seagrass surroundings. A Moses sole mimics a patch of sand. There seems no limit to the forms a fish can assume. A sea moth, patterned like the sand. And a scorpionfish, sprouting fins and flaps of skin like a clump of seagrass. The seagrass fields have even stranger denizens. Like Medusa's snaky tresses, a living forest rises from the grass. Eels, garden eels. They feed on drifting plankton, so they have to keep their heads up in the current. But that leaves them open to attack, and the seagrass is too short to hide in. The answer is a bolt hole. When danger threatens, the eels sink down out of sight. Not that dugongs pose a threat. They may eat the occasional mollusk or sea pen, but they live almost entirely on seagrass roots. Out in the desert, there's even less cover. For creatures that aren't camouflaged, the safety of a burrow is even more essential. This hole is shared by a pair of prawns and a goby. It seems an unequal partnership. The prawns do all the hard work, digging out the burrow, and the fish just sits there. It gets a hole to hide in, but what does it give in return? The prawns are almost blind, but the fish has good eyesight. The prawns use it as a lookout. So long as it's outside the hole, they're safe. They literally keep in touch with it with their long antennae. When danger threatens, the goby sees it coming, and all the partners take refuge in the burrow. If shallow sand flats are the deserts of the sea, coral heads like this are the oases, places to feed and to shelter. Coral heads support their own community, creatures that wouldn't survive out on the sands. They even have their own scorpionfish, disguised as living coral. Coral heads attract hunters. A triggerfish searches the sand for buried mollusks. A well-directed jet of water can blow their cover. The same technique can be used to upend a sea urchin and so get round its protective spines. This time the urchin escapes, but perhaps a broomtail wrasse will succeed where the triggerfish failed. Fish like this are small enough to take refuge in the coral. They can flaunt their colours without risk of attack. The brazen display attracts a mate. Out in the desert, courtship must be very different. These are peacock flounders, flattened miracles of sandy camouflage. The male flounder has a dilemma: how to woo a partner without inviting the attentions of passing predators. His secret weapon in this stealthy dance is a flamboyant dorsal fin, invisible at rest but highly conspicuous erect. Despite the male's best efforts, this female's not impressed. When spotted dolphins are hunting, the flounder's camouflage is tested to the limit. Even buried in the sand, they may not escape detection. Just a mouthful for a dolphin, but the last dance for a flounder. Column of spiny lobsters. Just as tanks in the desert are vulnerable to attack from the air, so even the heaviest crustacean armor can be penetrated. From the largest dolphin to the smallest fish, almost everything that swims here depends to some degree on seagrass for a living. There are a dozen kinds of seagrass, and in these shallow sunlit waters they grow fast, turning the sun's energy into food for grazers such as goatfish and rabbitfish. Seagrass beds can produce the equivalent of 6 crops of wheat a year. The fish they feed are food in turn for hunters like dolphins. If dolphins are the lions of these submarine savannas, dugong are the elephants, the ultimate converters of greenery into animal matter. In fact, elephants are their closest land-based relatives. Compared to other grazers of these underwater meadows, dugongs are giants. They can grow to 3 meters and weigh almost as much as a cow. Indeed, they're also called sea cows, the last survivors with their New World cousins, the manatees, of a group of mammals that's been hunted almost to extinction. Dugongs live almost entirely on seagrass. Their downward-facing mouths are ideally suited to grubbing up roots and rhizomes. A heavy skeleton provides the ballast to keep them on the bottom. The 30 meters of gut they need to digest all that vegetation account for their portly appearance. To the sailors of times past, dugongs with their mermaid tails were sirens, enchantresses whose songs lured ships to destruction in the shallows. But to the Aboriginal people of Australia, the dugong sings a different song. Back in the dream time, the dugong lived on land with her brother, the moon. Then, one day, collecting lotus roots in a billabong, she was bitten by a leech. She took refuge in the sea, leaving the moon alone with his reflection. In those distant times, land and sea were alive, every rock and every grain of sand a part of one great vital force. Even today, the sand can still come to life as hatchling turtles head for the sea, and the seagrass that will be their nursery. At night, the water comes alive too. Infant seahorses prance in the plankton. Down below, the parents of these fishy foals anchor themselves in meadows of seagrass. Even more curious, a sea dragon, a miniature monster hunting the grassy glades for tiny crustaceans. Night is the time for plankton eaters of many kinds, from the small to the unbelievably huge. A manta ray. Mantas can grow to 7 meters or more, but on the tiniest of creatures, channeled into their open mouths by those forward-pointing flaps. At dawn, the manta's dance will end. The plankton on which it feeds sinks into the deep. The rising sun lights other hunters. On a falling tide, some of the sand flats are exposed, roosting places for pelicans. The dawn patrol sets out in search of food. At low water, the coastal shallows are even shallower, the bottoms now within reach of questing beaks. Pelicans share their hunting grounds with dolphins, drawn here by the wealth of fish around the seagrass. These shallow, sheltered waters are nurseries for fish of many kinds. They come inshore from the reefs to spawn in the underwater meadows. For a dolphin, the seagrass fields give easy pickings. The fish may be small, but their numbers are huge. A dugong mother and her calf. Dugongs can live for 70 years or more. Females don't give birth until they're at least 10 years old. The calf will stay with its mother for the first 18 months of its life, even riding on her back for protection. Dugongs are tied to the warm and shallow waters where the seagrass grows. It's the mainstay of their diet. Dolphins too use the seagrass savannas to breed. There's less risk from sharks away from the deep water. But as fish eaters, They're free to roam where they will. A sunken ship becomes a man-made oasis. Decks where mariners once trod now give secure footing for corals, denied an anchorage in the shifting sands around the wreck. This artificial coral reef shelters fish by the thousand. Many will have started their lives offshore, spawned among the seagrass. They move to the reef as they mature. Coral reefs support a richness of life unrivaled in the tropical seas. That richness owes much to the fertility of the bays behind the reefs, the warm and sheltered nurseries of the sea grass. Less spectacular perhaps, but a vital part of the economy of the ocean. Our Baywatch has come to an end. Here our dolphin guides will leave us. The dolphins swim on, out into the blue. But that's another story.